Welcome, everyone, to our episode of Diary of Insurtech, where we explore the latest trends, developments, and stories shaping the insurance industry. Today, we're super excited. We have Caroline Schweppe with us to talk about her journey in insurance, her thoughts on the industry, and some of exciting things that are happening in the Canadian insurtech space. Welcome. Welcome, Caroline. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks. Thanks very much. It's lovely to be here.
So let's start from the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? Like, how did you get into insurance? It's always such a story with everybody of how they fell into this space.
And I did too. I come from an insurance family, so I'm probably the fourth generation in my family in various parts of the insurance industry. So I started actually as a broker in an entry-level job as a filing clerk in the automobile insurance department in a brokerage in Dublin. That brokerage is now part of the global conglomerate known as Marsh. But
I was from Marsh too in my
there you go.
days. So.
There you go. So I was very lucky. I had some really great mentors at the time, and it was unusual at that time for women to have such strong mentors. So I was able to navigate through the organization, and I eventually became responsible for leading the aviation and aerospace department within that organization. And that's actually what brought me to Canada. So I had, this weird combination of this, very unique insurance environment, had experience in reinsurance, had experience in the risk management side, did a lot of training for the clients that we were working with. And that brought me to Canada, and I worked for a number of alpha brokers as well when I came here. And then I decided to pivot, and I ended up working as the director of marketing for an insurance organization at the time was known as the Insurers Advisory Organization. And it was owned by 56 insurance companies. So I got to know everybody. I did all kinds of really great things. I led the marketing initiatives for the organization. It had gone from a not-for-profit organization to a for-profit organization. So there was all the change management that went with that. I led the IAO school for a while, which was a loss control school. And that's actually how I got to know most of the executives that are running the insurance industry today. They were on the fast track for training within that organization. And then, as luck would have it, I got into the tech side of the business. And I worked for a division of that organization called Automated Information Services, and it was all about data sharing, building out data platforms. And from there, it just kind of took off from there. So that was kind of where it went. My last gig, as most people know, was within the world of applied systems. I led the Insurer Solutions Group there, again, doing some really interesting things. So it's been an interesting journey, but I think my favorite part of the business is very much the stuff that I was doing at Applied off the side of my desk, which was working with Insurtechs.
No, that's amazing.
So I've actually established a business now working with Insurtechs. It's fun. It's an interesting journey. So really exciting times for us all.
For sure. So was it just happening organically? Like the opportunities just came to you, or did you go strategically think, this is interesting to me?
Not a bit strategic. Opportunities just came along, and it's kind of like what's going on in our world at the moment. So, the idea of what's new, what's exciting, what's changing. Can you make a difference? And, if you're in the right, and for me, I was in the right place at the right time. And these opportunities, came along. I can't say that I knew what I was walking into when I did it. And I would say I'm still the same in the work I do today. Every day I wake up and I'm like, okay, what's going to happen today that's new and interesting and exciting? And I think that's what drives us all every day. So I have absolutely no sense of strategy when it comes to myself. I'm very strategic about the work I do. But I can't say for 1 second that I was that smart. at all.
Oh, I want one tip though, because you talked about getting exposure to different carriers and then and then the executives. How did you build relationships? Because people think insurance is a large thing. It isn't.
Nope.
Everyone knows each other. So what are your secret tips to keeping those relationships going as you've
Yeah,
transitioned?
really good question. And people talk to me about that all the time because people feel that I'm very well connected in the industry. I think part of it is recognizing that everybody is coming from their own place, with their own challenges, and trying to see the work that we're all doing together from the perspective of the other person and building that sense of trust. Being authentic is a big part of it. I tend to be a bit of a straight shooter. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But when the industry is such that people move around within the industry, and the same people are showing up as they're moving up the ladder, and those relationships are built over years. So when somebody picks up the phone and you want to get a meeting, or in my case, I like to do lunch. So I'm all about lunch. And lunch, I think, is a fantastic way to spend time personally with somebody and then do a little business on the side. And I think it's kind of like this. I feel like we're at lunch right now, and it's building those friendships, relationships, and always being authentic about it, and understanding that sometimes things go wrong. And when they go wrong, make a phone call. Ask each other, how can we fix this, and how can we deepen the collaboration? And you just work on it. Every day I contact somebody or several people I know, to just stay in touch and hear what's going on in the industry. And that keeps me fresh in terms of my knowledge of what's going on. I can't say, it's moving so fast at the moment. I don't think any of us are really on top of everything, but those personal contacts really helped me.
That's
Love
so
it.
helpful to know just to how to build and maintain those relationships, and the action you're taking daily to maintain those relationships, right? I think that's a lost art where we just think that, okay, we're good with this person, and then a whole year could go by and you haven't even just checked in, right? And on a human level before even a business level. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I know you were talking about the pace of the industry right now. And so throughout your whole time in the industry, I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes happen. When you're talking about the pace today, what are your thoughts on that current state?
I don't think things have ever changed this fast. I think we're at a really pivotal time in the insurance industry where there is a real desire to move the needle on operational efficiencies and profitability, and the technology has caught up. So there were some great people with great ideas, and they just didn't have the technology at their fingertips to be able to make those changes. And I think back to, I'm dating myself. I sat on the steering committee for the introduction of the fax machine in our office. It was a big deal. So that was kind of a big project, and it was a big project, and it took months. Now somebody can flick a switch and buy a piece of software and turn it on and be ready to go. And once the user experience, and once that user interface is reasonably simple to use, and they are, there's no big production about it. But there were times all the way through, so that there was the introduction of fax machines and big computer systems that were really basically word processors. And then the next big pivotal time, I think, in the industry was very much around the time of the launch of the internet. And I remember we had a launch party. We were going through launching a service that we had on the internet, and we had about 250 insurance executives in the room, and we did a hands up poll. How many have an email in their office or internet access? And there were 10. And we went ahead anyway. We did it anyway. We took the risk. And 18 months later, we had virtually migrated every single client over to our internet service. And then you heard about cloud, and I remember thinking, how am I going to learn about cloud? What does that mean? Like, is the stuff in the cloud? Of course, I learned over time. I had really great, I'm not a techie, so I had really great technical resources who could dumb it down enough for me that I could speak to that in a business way, without making it all seem so frightening. And here we are at another amazing opportunity in the business, which is all I hear about all day long, and I work in the space, is artificial intelligence. And you know, I'm using it myself for some basic stuff. I can't say I'm coding or anything with it, but the stuff that we're able to do, you know, and 18 months ago, it was, you know, oh, just a thing. And now it's real, and now we're using it, and even the kids are using it.
Yeah, and I love the timeline that you just provided. That was so
That's the
cool.
technology timeline.
Yeah, the
It was
technology
right there
timeline.
through it all. And I can tell you, we messed up lots along the way, but that was okay, because that's part of the exploration journey in technology.
Hmm.
You have to allow yourself to fail.
Well, what do you think the biggest challenges are going to be in this age of AI?
There's I'm working with a lot of insurance companies in the work I do, and it's really about finding the champions who understand that there's a risk to be taken, and to identify what AI's purpose is. To me, it's kind of like when you get in behind the wheel of the car and the car goes. You don't know how the car goes. AI should be seamless, and it allows us to process masses of data in really small windows of time. But what I find really fascinating is the ability to use AI for coding. So I watched a team, I was in Australia a couple of weeks ago, and I watched a team develop a program. And it took them about an hour and a half, you know, and they were trying to unstick a really sticky problem. And it would have taken months. And they just went in and they did their prompts and said, you know, build a program to do this, this, and this. They had to tweak it a bit. Human intervention is really important, but the outcome was game changing for that particular business. They'll implement it, and it's going to allow them to really operate at a much higher level of efficiency without actually having to put any strain on the human resources. So finding people, and it's people who make the decisions at the end of the day. We deal with companies, but they are people. How do you find the people who understand that there's a risk to take, but at the same time put the guardrails around the project so that it doesn't skew itself out of, you know, the scope creep can be phenomenal. So focus, you know, my line in the sand is always focus on the focus. What are you trying to do? Keep focusing on the focus, and the other stuff you can do later. But it's a hard one, you know, and it's a lot of money going to be spent on AI, and a lot of that money will show no return on investment, but it must be done.
I love that. Yeah, it's exciting talking about the developments in insurance and innovation, Caroline. I guess without giving too much away, you've had some exposure to what we're working at here at Rival.
A little bit.
What stands out to you or aligns with what you're seeing in the industry? Be curious to hear.
I think the things that are really interesting to me about what's going on at Rival is that you're listening to your customers. And your customers are also collaborating with you in a big way. Like, you've got some really great partners within the organization. I love the fact that together you're developing, and they're taking the risk and you're taking the risk. I love that. Because there's no way an Insurtech can operate without that. I love the idea that you are building an open platform where your customers can have free access to other services and solutions that they need to run their business. Some of the larger organizations tend to be a little bit more closed. Part of that is, I won't say it's philosophical, I think it's more just the technology stacks don't allow it. And when the technology stacks don't allow it, it kind of just adds to that clunkiness of the system. I love the fact that you have developed a strategy over a period of time, and it's a really aggressive strategy to build out the new platform. And you're meeting your targets and you're meeting your deadlines, and there's touch points along the way. I've enjoyed our interactions with the clients that I represent, and I think it's going to be very exciting as we bring all of these pieces together. And I'm seeing who else you're collaborating with. It's really great to see competition in the marketplace, real competition. And I've worked for other organizations, obviously, and I think it's just essential that the industry open up. What I would love to see is more organizations supporting insurtechs who are taking these kinds of risks. That's a big challenge. It's a big challenge everywhere. Nobody wants to be the first to market in this business. Nobody got fired for buying IBM. These are old, cliches, but it's still true. So again, getting back to this thing of finding those people who are willing to collaborate and have the guts to do it and be supportive. Because sometimes it's not going to go right. You guys are doing something new. So I don't think I've given anything away. But there's a real appetite, and the people that you're hiring, you've got some fantastic talent, and leveraging the talent that was already within the organization, and then growing out, bringing in specific talent for certain things. You're making a big impact in that way.
I love that. I love that. Touching on your points there, Caroline, on the people side of things and actually the businesses or the insurtechs that are collaborating, you've had a front row seat to some big shifts happening in the industry. Are there any companies or technologies that you think are really pushing the boundaries right now and maybe on that collaboration effort or on the people side of things that have really caught your eye?
Not as much as I would have expected. So there's a ton of stuff going on. There's a ton of really interesting startups where they're selecting slices of the pie. And I think the ones that are going to survive, and I'm talking to a lot of them, are the ones that recognize that you can't go it alone, that you need to have partnerships with organizations that can build what you need. So it's no more of this, we're going to build everything in-house. Partnering, collaborating, having these open platforms, and even the word platform is probably a thing of the past. So finding the thread in all of that and recognizing that it's not just about one partnership. It's probably about a whole lot of things. So it's a partnership between the customer, it's a partnership between the technology business, being nimble enough to recognize that go in this direction, it's going to get you more traction. I'm in a very interesting situation right now where I'm working with one client who has met up with a great sponsor organization who are opening opportunities with large insurers who are kind of doing digital lab stuff, and they're putting money on the table to do that. So allowing the startups to go through a process of building use cases, whether they're for them or not, doesn't matter, but providing the funds to do that as testing for the market. And it kind of gives me some really good comfort and some great hope that the large entities who are our customers have the opportunity to do that and are thinking about that. And it gives insurtechs the space and the time to explore things and play with certain things, because you think you know what your use case should be, and then really the real business opportunity is somewhere else. And the structure of how this organization is supporting startups to engage with these large organizations. So it's getting the startups to the right people. We're back to this again, finding access to the right people and then teaching the startup how to actually speak the language. So I'm only an insurance geek. I'm not a technology geek. So, I'm always thinking, what is that executive problem? What are they trying to solve for? And as long as we're all on that same page, we can move it forward. But, it's another long-winded answer to your question, Ellen. But really, I think this idea of collaboration and partnership and sponsorship of projects and programs, allowing everybody to learn and excel, makes a huge amount of sense.
Couldn't agree more.
That's awesome. All right, we're on to the fun segment of the podcast. It's called Thumbs Up or Thumbs Down.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask you or a question or a statement related to insurance or Insurtech, and then you just give us a thumbs up, thumbs down with a brief explanation why. So the first one is, what are your thoughts on the rise of vertical SaaS platforms that bundle insurance with operational tools for small to medium businesses?
I think it's pretty cool. So I'll
Thumbs
give it a
up or
thumbs
thumbs
up.
down?
Give
All
it a
right.
thumbs up. I think it's pretty cool. I think there's some learning to be done, bundling the right kind of services. The whole rise of embedded insurance is an amazing opportunity for everybody. However, there's a proviso to this. It does not preclude the need for insurance expertise somewhere along the line. So, having the right kind of broker or the right kind of insurance underwriter at your to have access to that, to understand that you can't just buy a piece of insurance. There's certain things that are really simplified. But I think it needs to be explored more. But it's a really interesting, and it's not new. It's been around for a while. So we've been playing with it as an industry for a while. It's quite there, but I would give it a thumbs up.
All right. All right. On to the next one. What about open insurance APIs enabling broker carrier connectivity and better quoting?
You're speaking my language.
Yeah, you kind of just alluded to it.
Yeah, well, and I spent most of my career trying to organize that. Part of that is really, and I'm going to say this to the brokers listening, if an insurer provides you with access and they've spent, millions of dollars doing all the technology, or a tech company, try to use it, try to keep it going, because I can't tell you how many stories I've heard about APIs left in the trash can because nobody used them. But this idea of broker carrier connectivity is critical. In Canada, it's not that easy because there are various entities that are kind of all collaborating together. So again, we need the collaboration, we need everybody. It's not just directly from one insurer to one broker. To make it standard and to make it seamless is really, the story should be, how do we get all of everybody on the same standards?
All right.
API
And then the
is just a
last
phone
one.
line. It's just a phone line.
Last one is using generative AI to underwrite small commercial policies in real time.
2 thumbs up.
All right.
2 thumbs up. The reason being that usually they're pretty standard. If you have the right kind of data, and I happen to be working with a data company that can do all the data searches. If you have the right kind of data, it's very simple to turn around a quote or a piece of new business or even a renewal very quickly. So the more you can automate that process, we've done really good work in automating the personal line space. Commercial lines is right for that. So you are, again, talking my language. I like that. So definitely 2 thumbs up for that.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we're now at the part around the personal question. We did give you one in advance, so we'd like to ask every guest a fun personal question so we can get to know you better. So if you could have dinner with anyone in the past or the present, who would it be and why?
So I had to think about that one. And I kind of went back to the very beginning. So I decided I would like to have dinner with Edward Lloyd, the guy who started the coffee house, because he had built an environment where insurance executives and merchants and all these people could collaborate with each other, and provided an environment where they could learn to capture market intelligence. He built a newspaper and shipping news and all of that sort of stuff. And I'd love to see or hear what somebody like that was thinking when they did that. And if that person was to imagine the global industry that the insurance industry has become, and that nothing moves in the world, nothing happens in the world without insurance. I don't think anybody would have ever expected that. But to hear what the vision was it just a coffee house? Or did Edward Lloyd really understand what he was establishing? And, when you look at that history of the whole organization and how it developed over time, again, it was about relationships and trust and good intel and data in its own way. You know, they still have the records of all of the policies written down in a book. It's there.
Beautiful. And I love how you're using the words like all those things that we think about at Rival too. It's like the data, the relationships, the intel. Like, how can we establish something that can last for a very long time?
Yeah. And we're sitting on a lot of data.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great stuff. Well, thank you, Caroline, for joining us today and sharing your insights. It's been an absolute pleasure. Any closing remarks, Caroline, before we wrap up?
I have to say, I'm really honored to be part of the podcast, and I'm not comfortable, as I said at the beginning of all this, in the whole podcast world. So you've made it very easy. But I want to say how happy I am that Rival is doing the stuff that it's doing. It's a pleasure working with all of you in my work, and I wish you all the very best of luck in your endeavors. It's just a terrific journey to watch. It's just amazing. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this.
Well, thank you, Caroline. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for our listeners for tuning in. Be sure to join us next time.